To understand who the Pilgrims were, we really have to remind ourselves a little bit of the religious history of Europe in the centuries leading up to the Pilgrims' migration to North America. One of the ways to think of the story is to think about the gradual movement away from a Catholic Christendom, where the Catholic Church is dominant across Europe, is the established church in a close relationship with the government, the monarchy of each nation state in Europe. The beginnings of its collapse we usually trace to the actions of Martin Luther in the early 1500s. Luther, this theologian, monk, educator in Germany, in present-day Germany, who begins to question some of the authoritative teachings of the Catholic Church. Very famously, in 1517, he dogmatically presents these 95 theses or 95 propositions that are questioning church teaching, particularly with regard to the selling of dispensations, which were basically the church sort of granting forgiveness for various kinds of offenses against God in exchange usually for some remuneration of some sort. When Martin Luther makes those propositions, he's not wanting to break with the Catholic Church. He's wanting to challenge certain Catholic teaching and hopefully lead to change. It doesn't work that way. And from 1517 on, we see the struggle between Luther and the Catholic Pope at the time, leading ultimately to Luther's excommunication. We find that then in the 1520s, the beginning of what we call the Protestant Reformation, in the beginning of the establishment of protesting churches that are protesting and separating themselves from Catholicism. This begins only in Europe, really, and doesn't touch England initially. England continues to be quite faithful to the Catholic Church until the early 1530s, when the new king of England, Henry VIII, cannot achieve a male heir. And that leads to his desire to remarry, which means to get an annulment, because he's not going to be allowed to divorce, but to get an annulment of his marriage to his current wife, Catherine of Aragon. The Pope at this time says, "I'm sorry, that's not going to be a possibility." And the response that Henry then sends back is to break with the Catholic Church. So in 1533, Henry has the Parliament declare himself the head of an independent Church of England, what today we would call the Anglican Church. The rest of the 1500s in England is a kind of struggle that waxes and wanes over whether this Anglican Church will be the permanent new established Church of England or whether the country will revert to Catholicism. And there are some English monarchs who would really like to do that, to return to submission to the Catholic Church, and some who are very committed to an Anglican Church. In that context, there is actually a smaller group of Protestants in England, Anglicans, who are absolutely committed to the break with Catholicism, but don't think that the Anglican Church is really broken, at least not sufficiently, because when they look at Anglican church teaching, they still see vestiges of Catholicism that they don't believe are scripturally justified. They think some of the ritual in Anglican worship is still just too much a product of Catholic inheritance. The hierarchy in the Anglican Church with bishops and priests, they don't think is scripturally justified. So this gives birth to a small group of Anglicans that begin to call themselves Puritans. And what they mean by that name is they're wanting to purify the Church of England from those elements of Catholicism that they believe have survived. Within Puritanism, and this is the last step in this convoluted story, within Puritanism there is yet a smaller subgroup. These are Anglicans who want to purify the church from Catholic remnants, But they come to the conclusion, this subset, that this isn't possible. And so they begin to take on the label separatists. And their conclusion is that the Anglican Church is beyond Reformation, and that the only way that they can be faithful to how they understand scriptural teaching is to separate from the Anglican Church. They will go so far as to say that to worship with Anglicans, to sit under an Anglican minister's teaching, is sin. That the Anglican Church is no true church. So we talk about the Anglican Church, the beginning in protest, and then Puritans are protesting against the protesters, and then ultimately the separatists are like the most radical of religious radicals of their day. And that's where we find what we remember as the Pilgrims, the radical, who had basically said, we simply cannot worship in an Anglican congregation, and if jail is the alternative, then so be it. But we cannot stay within the Anglican Church.